Wouldn't it be like the most petty, humiliating, yet startling thing if I just fired my hat at him?
Everything looked perfect from the outside. Ron Howard was the smiling young star America watched grow up every single week. Fans believed the cast of The Andy Griffith Show was one big happy family, and for the most part, that image wasn't far from the truth. Ron often spoke with respect about Andy Griffith, Don Knotts, and the lessons they taught him as a child. But Hollywood is rarely as simple as it seems. Behind the laughter, handshakes, and bright studio lights, there were moments that never made it onto television. And one relationship would eventually leave a lasting impression on Ron Howard that few people expected. As Ron grew from a child actor into one of Hollywood's most respected directors, he earned a reputation that almost everyone agreed on. People described him as patient, humble, and easy to work with. He avoided public feuds, stayed away from scandal, and focused on telling great stories. That is exactly why the rare moments when he openly criticized another actor caught so much attention. If someone as calm as Ron Howard had a serious problem with another performer, people naturally wanted to know what had happened. But the answer wasn't as simple as gossip magazines made it sound. It wasn't about one bad day or one heated argument. According to stories shared over the years, the tension grew because of repeated behavior that made working together increasingly difficult. What started as small frustrations slowly became impossible to ignore. And when that line was finally crossed, Ron made a decision that surprised many people who knew him. Before we reveal who that actor was and what really happened, here's a question for you. Do you think even the nicest people have a breaking point, or should professionals always find a way to work things out? Let us know your thoughts in the comments because this story might change the way you see Hollywood forever. What happened next wasn't a loud public fight. There were no dramatic press conferences or shocking social media posts. Instead, the truth came out little by little through interviews, memories, and stories shared years later. When all those pieces were finally put together, they revealed a side of Hollywood that most fans never get to see. And the actor at the center of it all probably never expected Ron Howard to speak so honestly. The man many people believe Ron Howard was referring to was not someone audiences expected. It wasn't one of his closest television co-stars, and it wasn't a longtime friend from his childhood. Instead, it was an actor whose reputation behind the scenes had already become the subject of countless Hollywood stories. While Ron Howard has rarely used harsh words in public, he has made it clear over the years that professionalism matters more to him than fame. For someone who built his entire career on respect and teamwork, repeatedly dealing with difficult behavior was something he simply couldn't ignore. But what happened behind closed doors made the situation even more complicated than anyone realized. As Ron transitioned from acting to directing, he found himself responsible for much more than delivering a great performance. Hundreds of people depended on him every day. A single delay could cost the production thousands of dollars. Every decision affected the crew, the cast, and the future of the film itself. That meant there was very little room for ego or unnecessary drama. Ron believed every actor, no matter how famous, had the responsibility to respect everyone working around them. When someone repeatedly ignored that unspoken rule, it created tension that spread across the entire set. People who worked with Ron often described him as someone who stayed calm even during the most stressful moments. He didn't yell. He didn't embarrass people publicly. Instead, he listened carefully and tried to solve problems quietly. But even the calmest person has limits. According to stories shared by people familiar with these productions, there were moments when one actor's behavior tested Ron's patience again and again. What made the situation especially frustrating wasn't just the disagreements themselves. It was the feeling that the problems could have been avoided with a little more respect and professionalism. As the days passed, Ron realized this wasn't going to fix itself. Every conversation seemed to lead back to the same problems. The atmosphere on set became noticeably different, and people began whispering about the growing tension. Then came the moment that forced Ron to make a choice. It wasn't dramatic in front of the cameras, but behind the scenes, it changed the relationship forever. And when the details finally began to surface years later, many fans were shocked that Hollywood's nicest director had reached a point where he simply wanted nothing more to do with that actor. For years, Ron Howard refused to turn the situation into a public spectacle. He never built his career by attacking other celebrities or creating headlines. Instead, he let his work speak for itself. But every now and then, small comments in interviews offered a glimpse into how deeply professionalism mattered to him. He believed that making a great film was never about one superstar. It was about hundreds of people working together toward the same goal. When one person placed their own ego above everyone else, the entire production suffered. That belief became one of the guiding principles of Ron's career, and it also explained why certain working relationships simply could not be repaired. Hollywood has always been filled with larger-than-life personalities. Some actors are known for their incredible talent, while others become famous for the chaos that follows them from one production to another. Ron had seen both sides of the industry. As a child actor, he watched experienced performers arrive prepared, treat the crew with respect, and create an atmosphere where everyone wanted to do their best. Those early lessons stayed with him for decades. So when he eventually found himself working with people who ignored those values, the contrast was impossible to miss. What surprised many people was that Ron never seemed interested in revenge. He didn't launch personal attacks or spend years criticizing anyone. His response was much quieter, but perhaps even more powerful. If someone proved difficult enough to damage the trust on set, Ron simply chose not to work with that person again. In Hollywood, where directors often reunite with actors they admire, being left off that list sends a message stronger than almost any public statement. It wasn't about holding a grudge. It was about protecting the environment that allowed everyone else to succeed. This story also reveals something many fans overlook about success. Winning awards, earning millions of dollars, or becoming famous doesn't guarantee that people will enjoy working with you. In the film industry, your reputation follows you everywhere. Crew members remember who treated them kindly. Directors remember who showed up prepared. Actors remember who made long days easier instead of harder. Those memories often shape future opportunities more than the audience ever realizes. And as more insiders quietly shared similar stories over the years, a clearer picture began to emerge. The real lesson wasn't about one disagreement between two people. It was about how character can matter just as much as talent when the cameras stop rolling. And the final chapter of this story would reveal why Ron Howard's approach earned him respect that lasted far longer than any single movie ever could. As more stories from Hollywood insiders began to surface, one thing became impossible to ignore. Ron Howard's reputation didn't come from clever public relations or carefully planned interviews. It came from decades of consistency. Actor after actor described him as someone who listened, stayed calm under pressure, and treated every member of the crew with respect. That is exactly why the rare occasions when he expressed disappointment carried so much weight. If Ron Howard felt someone had crossed the line, people assumed there had to be a serious reason behind it. Looking back, those who worked with Ron often noticed the same pattern. He never expected perfection. Everyone has bad days, disagreements, and creative differences. But he believed there was a huge difference between disagreeing respectfully and creating an atmosphere that made everyone else's job harder. For Ron, filmmaking was built on trust. Once that trust disappeared, it became incredibly difficult to rebuild. Some relationships recovered with honest conversations, while others quietly faded away without ever making newspaper headlines. That quiet approach became one of Ron's greatest strengths. Instead of feeding Hollywood gossip, he focused on making better films. While others became known for public feuds and endless controversy, Ron directed award-winning movies that earned both critical praise and audience respect. His success wasn't built on drama. It was built on preparation, patience, and surrounding himself with people who shared the same professional values. Over time, many actors actively wanted to work with him because they knew his sets were organized, respectful, and free from unnecessary conflict. If you've ever worked with someone whose attitude affected the entire team, you probably understand why this story resonates with so many people. Talent can open doors, but character often decides how long those doors stay open. Let us know in the comments if you've ever experienced a situation where one person's behavior changed everything for an entire group. Sometimes the biggest lessons don't come from success. They come from seeing what happens when respect disappears. In the end, This wasn't just a story about one difficult relationship. It was about the values that shaped Ron Howard's entire career. He proved that you don't have to be the loudest person in the room to earn lasting respect. Sometimes the strongest statement is simply choosing integrity over conflict and letting your work speak louder than your words. And as you'll see in our next story, another Hollywood legend faced a betrayal so unexpected that it changed the course of an entire career forever. Ron Howard never claimed that everyone he worked with was perfect. In fact, one of the greatest lessons he learned from spending his entire life in Hollywood was that talent and character don't always go hand in hand. Some of the most gifted people he ever met were also the most difficult to understand. Others were kind, generous, and supportive from the very beginning. Those experiences shaped not only the way Ron viewed people but also the way he directed every movie that followed. By the time he became one of Hollywood's most respected filmmakers, he had made a quiet promise to himself. His movie sets would never become places filled with fear, tension, or unnecessary conflict. Everyone, from the biggest star to the newest production assistant, deserved to be treated with respect. That philosophy wasn't created overnight. It came from years of watching how people behaved when the cameras stopped rolling. As a child on The Andy Griffith Show, Ron quickly learned that television magic and real life weren't always the same thing. Millions of viewers believed the cast lived like one happy family because that was exactly what they saw every week. But once the director yelled "cut," personalities changed, emotions surfaced, and private disagreements returned. It was an early reminder that actors are still human beings with strengths, weaknesses, and complicated emotions. Those lessons stayed with him long after he left Mayberry behind. Years later, when Ron was directing blockbuster films with enormous budgets and world-famous actors, he often remembered those childhood experiences. He understood that a single difficult personality could affect hundreds of hardworking people. Delays became expensive. Morale dropped. Creative energy disappeared. That's why he valued humility far more than ego. In interview after interview, people who worked with Ron described him as calm, prepared, and incredibly patient. He didn't demand respect because of his Oscar or his success. He earned it by giving respect first. If you've enjoyed this story so far, make sure you subscribe because the next chapter reveals how Ron Howard transformed painful early experiences into one of the most admired directing careers in Hollywood history. The secret wasn't luck. It was a simple principle that very few people in the entertainment industry manage to follow consistently. Looking back today, it's clear that Ron Howard's story isn't really about hatred at all. It's about disappointment, forgiveness, and learning from difficult people instead of becoming like them. While others allowed conflict to define their careers, Ron quietly built a legacy based on integrity, professionalism, and trust. In an industry where scandals often make the loudest headlines, perhaps that's the most remarkable achievement of all. And the final lesson he wants people to remember may be the most important one yet. Fame may open doors, but character is what keeps them open for a lifetime. As Ron Howard looks back on more than 6 decades in Hollywood, one truth stands above everything else. Success isn't measured only by awards, blockbuster movies, or standing ovations. It's measured by the kind of person you choose to be when nobody is watching. Throughout his incredible journey, Ron worked with legends, rising stars, and unforgettable personalities. Some became lifelong friends. Others became valuable lessons. Every experience, whether joyful or painful, helped shape the director and man he would eventually become. Looking back, it's almost incredible to think that the little boy who played Opie Taylor would one day direct films like Apollo 13, A Beautiful Mind, Frost/Nixon, and Rush. Few child actors successfully reinvent themselves, but Ron accomplished something even rarer. He earned respect in every stage of his career. That didn't happen because he chased fame. It happened because he never stopped learning from the people around him, both the good examples and the bad ones. The difficult memories from his childhood, including his complicated relationship with Frances Bavier, didn't make him bitter. In fact, they seem to have had the opposite effect. Instead of creating a harsh working environment, Ron became known for building movie sets where actors felt safe to perform and crews enjoyed coming to work each day. Many performers have described him as one of the easiest directors to collaborate with because he listens before he speaks, stays calm under pressure, and never allows his ego to become the center of attention. Years later, when Ron expressed disappointment over J.D. Vance's political transformation after directing Hillbilly Elegy, he handled that situation the same way he handled everything else in his career, with restraint. He didn't launch personal attacks or spend months fueling controversy. He simply admitted that he felt saddened by how much someone he once admired had changed. Whether people agree with his opinion or not, his response reflected the same quiet dignity that has defined his public life for decades. Think about your own life for a moment. Have you ever trusted someone, only to realize later they weren't the person you believed they were? Or perhaps you've worked alongside someone whose attitude affected everyone around them. Those experiences can be painful, but they also teach us valuable lessons about character, honesty, and choosing the right people to surround ourselves with. Share your thoughts in the comments because stories like this remind us that these challenges aren't limited to Hollywood, they happen everywhere. In the end, Ron Howard's story isn't one of hatred. It's a story of disappointment, forgiveness, resilience, and growth. The people who let him down became chapters in a much bigger journey, one that ultimately transformed a talented child actor into one of the most respected filmmakers of his generation. His career proves that true greatness isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about responding to it with integrity, learning from every setback, and never allowing bitterness to define your future. If you enjoyed uncovering the untold side of Ron Howard's remarkable life, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep dive into the hidden stories behind Hollywood's biggest legends. And trust us, you won't want to miss the next story, because another beloved television icon kept a shocking secret hidden for decades, and when the truth finally came out, it changed the way fans viewed them forever.